Man, what a joy Hebrews 5 is it just gives us a chance to reflect on our great high priest. Jesus functioning as our high priest is a gift that we just don't appreciate. We just don't live in a culture with a priesthood being an important part of the political system. Those of us in Protestant traditions, we don't use the word priest. We know that we are all the priesthood of believers, but man, to have Christ as the high priest, the head of our order, the one that we follow, what an amazing, amazing thing. And so let's again get a head start. I take issue with where they put all the numbers in the book of Hebrews. I think this chapter should start at the end of chapter 5. Verse 14 of chapter 4, since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Let us hold fast to our confession. Since we have Jesus as our high priest, we can hold on to our confession. In fact, since we have Jesus as our high priest, we should hold on to our confession. Jesus didn't die, raise, and abandon us. Jesus didn't solve sin and death and then say, work it out for yourself. Rather, he functions not only as our advocate, but as our high priest that we remain connected to. So we hold on to our confession because of his holding on to us. Jesus is wonderful. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet was without sin. We don't have, this is true of almost every system, is the guys at the top just don't know what it's like to be the guys at the bottom. Whether you're talking about a military structure, a political structure, a business structure, the CEO and the guy working the yard, it's just hard to put yourself in that other person's, place. But that's exactly what Jesus did, is came down and put himself in our place and struggled with the frailty and the weaknesses of being human. Sometimes in our attempt to defend the divinity of Jesus, which we absolutely should defend, we neglect the full humanity of Jesus, the fact that he was fatigued and tired and hungry and betrayed and tempted in every way that we are, and yet was without sin. That's our high priest. That's the one we follow. He's the head of our order. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in a time of need. Isn't this amazing? Why can we draw near to the throne of grace and expect grace and mercy? Well, because Jesus knows what it feels like. Because we don't have to explain to Jesus what sorrow is. Because we don't have to explain to Jesus what temptation is. That we don't have to explain to Jesus what human frailty is. He knows it. He's felt it. That's an amazing truth. So then jumping into chapter 5, and just for our devotions this morning, can we just think about Jesus? Just enjoy being the line of royal priests with this high priest at the head of the order. For every high priest chosen from among men is appointed to act on behalf of men in relation to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sin. We really misunderstand what a priest is. That is a great definition, a biblical definition of what a priest is. A priest is chosen to act on behalf of men in relation to God. So in the Old Testament, you can think about a prophet bringing the word of God to the people and a priest representing the people to God. And of course, priests say stuff and that to encourage people in the Lord too. But their function is that they would represent us before God. They would be the one sacrificing the animal and saying, hey, this is on behalf of all of my countrymen, all my friends and neighbors. They were the ones that represented us in relation to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sin. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward because he himself is beset with weakness. So the big idea in the Old Testament was not to be that the priests were better than everybody. It was rather, no, they're the ones who are chosen to go and represent the rest of us, and they deal with the rest of us sympathetically because they have the same weaknesses we have. So as they say, hey, this is the sacrifice for sin, they're not saying this sacrifice for sin, whatever that is. No, they understand the weaknesses of being human. And while Jesus was without sin, he understands the weaknesses of being human. a God this is. That we come to him weak and tired and broken, and he doesn't say, man, I sympathize with you, but I don't know what you're talking about. Rather, he says, man, I've been where you are. I have felt what you feel. Because of this, he is obligated, back to the Old Testament priest, because of this, he is obligated to offer sacrifice for his own sin, just as he does for those of the people. And no one takes this honor for himself, but only when called by God, just as Aaron was. So also Christ did not exalt himself to be made a high priest, but was appointed by him who said to him, you are my son, today I have begotten you. And he says in another place, you are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who is able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. This is so amazing as this very Hebraic thought, by the way. This will challenge us Western thinkers like crazy. Is the author saying, well, Jesus needed to be perfected because he lacked something? No, Jesus was perfect. The deity of Christ is all over this passage, and yet Jesus learned. Jesus matured. Jesus came to understand his calling as the high priest and fit into that role because of the call of God on his life. And he was perfected in that. He was matured in that through his suffering. Not that there was sin, but that there was growth in his human person. Notice in verse 7, it started by saying, in the days of his flesh. Jesus didn't need to mature from all time, but as he emptied himself, there was maturity that needed to take place. Being designated by God as a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Of course, Melchizedek, this Old Testament nebulous character who has no beginning and no end. We don't know where he came from. We don't know where he went, but he sacrifices to Yahweh. So then the passage continues. About this, we have much to say, and it is hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing. I love it when the Bible goes, look, this is hard to understand. This is hard to explain. But the author of Hebrews says, oh, it's hard to explain because you've been dull in your understanding. It's not hard to understand because Jesus is far from you. It's not hard to understand because the person of Jesus is hard to get your head around. No, rather it's that you follow yourself. There's dullness in your understanding. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone else to teach you. Again, the basic principles of the oracles of God. You need milk, not solid food, for everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness since he is a child. You know, I think one of the most difficult things about our culture is that we have set up a thing where, well, we have experts for everything, right? You got the mechanic who's the expert on your car, and you've got the doctor who's the expert on any of the specialties that a doctor could be, and you've got, the dentist who's the expert on your teeth, and you've got the English teacher who's the expert in that, and whatever. And we kind of have resigned becoming an expert in the scriptures to, college professors and clergy. And what an encouragement this is to say, you have a high priest who knows what you're going through. And you can approach the throne of grace just like you are. And this should thrust you into becoming an expert in the scriptures, in the things of God. To not just make, a couple morning devotions a week and Sunday, every once in a while hit a service on Sunday morning. Rather, to say, no, every Christian should strive to be an expert in the things of God. You're a kingdom of priests, men and women sent into the culture to represent the people before God and to proclaim God to the people. What are you an expert in? Could you become an expert in the scriptures? Hey, be loved.